Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
It's been a very powerful morning and afternoon. There's been a lot of big shoes put out here, and I feel privileged to be going next, because even though I'm not going to fill out those shoes have covered some of the things that I was going to be discussing. So it's in that spirit that I will be making this presentation on behalf of Canada. All right, we are Southern Cameroonians, even more empowering, we are Amazonians. So in this presentation, I would ask your permission to use the language of the colonizer to characterize us. And that characterization is Anglophones. And this is the reason why I intend to use the language of the colonizers. It is to deconstruct and evoke the strategies of annexation, which is couched in that language. And this characterization of us is, in a sense, what has been an annexationist tendency that has been a primary preoccupation of the colonizers for the last 60 years. So, as the previous speakers have spoken, they have led us in the history of where we were. And I'll just take us up from the AAC 1 and 2. So from the issues of identity and territoriality raised during these meetings were tabled to the government, and one of the lead persons in those meetings has just spoken. The government paid little attention to these resolutions and continued to maintain the status quo, which continues to systematically put and subjugate the Anglophone peoples of Cameroon to their annexationist tendencies. So after these meetings, we had several months of petitions that people made to the government to adhere to some of the policies that were developed in these meetings, but there's been continuous disregard by the government of the Republique du Cameroon to pay heed to this cause, to listen to the people's pleas, and to get to the root cause of this problem. So this brought us to a boiling point as a people. The government's strategy was to systematically inflict poverty on our peoples through deprivation, exclusion, marginalization, and force our people to migrate into French-speaking regions to seek a better livelihood. This was designed to forcefully acculturate our people, and once in these French regions, where they were barely making a living, with blue-collar menial jobs, our government systematically, as you've heard in previous presentations, transferred French-speaking Cameroonians into our territories in order to dilute our populations, and also this was a mechanism designed by the government to advance its annexationist agenda. A cursory look at the grievances of the lawyers, the teachers, reveals that this mechanism was put in place to strip Anglophones of their personality, of their humanity, ultimately rob them of their homeland and erase our history. These are designed as strategies of annexation, and that is why you had the topic of this presentation being strategies of annexation and mechanisms of disempowerment by la Republique du Cameroon. Coincidentally, these strategies are also some of the things that were the immediate causes of the uprising in 2016. So social strategies. The imposition of Francophone teachers to run English schools with little knowledge of the Anglo-Saxon system. The imposition of Francophone teachers to teach the arts and sciences in our Anglophone schools instead of teaching the French language if their intent was to enforce the bilingual spirit of the Federation. Professional training institutions in our regions are overflooded with French-speaking Cameroonians, thereby depriving our own people of the access to opportunities to these educations, and as a consequence, our people have limited access to job opportunities that stem from the professional institutions that were designed to fill these job opportunities. The effects, and I'll just quote a statistics, we say that between 70 to 80% of Francophones are in our institutions. Meanwhile, there is only about 20% of our people in those same institutions. Now, when you go over to French Cameroon, those same institutions, you find again that there is the same 80% of French Cameroonians in those institutions, and our people have only about 20%. So, however way you look at it, we are being disadvantaged in our own territories, and even where they have coerced us to get into their territories, we are still being disadvantaged. The effects of this is that Anglophone students, Anglophone peoples, Anglophone professionals are poorly trained, deprived of access to these opportunities, and then systematically eliminated from possibilities of employment. We talk about the deliberate Frenchification of Anglophone institutes of higher learning. For example, the University of Boya, high populations of students now attending some of these high institutes of learning are a majority of people from French Cameroon. Again, that is somewhat a repeat of what I've been talking about, but it is worth repeating because that is something that is happening over and over and over again. We have the dilution of strict admissions processes that are distinct and unique to the Anglo-Saxon system of education. These strict admission policies are being replaced by concours, which are just openings for the French Cameroon regime to bring corrupt practices which deprive our people who are very competitive and who are meritorious, who are competitive to enter these institutions based on merit, and now they are being forced to adapt to a system that is designed to play by corruption. And so this benefits largely, again, the sons of ministers, of personalities within the French Cameroon, depriving our own people of access to these institutions, and consequently, employment is not a thing for us because we don't have the requisite education to meet the demands of the employment that is out there. The appointment of French judges, of bailiffs, versed in the civil law to adjudicate matters in common law courts in our common law system is also another aspect of these annexationist tendencies of la Republique du Cameroon. We have Francophone judges presiding over courts in southern Cameroons. We have Francophone judges imposing the use of French language in our judicial system in adjudicating matters of common law, thereby depriving our local public access to justice, because we are used to justice in a language and in procedures that we understand. And so by imposing the French language without even giving access to interpreters, they are thereby depriving our people of justice and thereby creating an injustice in a system that should be otherwise just. The forceful use and application of French civil law over British common law procedures, that is what I was talking about. The effects of this, as I've indicated, is a large miscarriage of justice. The high numbers of graduates, as many people have indicated here, we have a very intellectual population. Our people love to study books. Our people are very educated, but one of the biggest problems is, despite all this education, we have a very great difficulty finding jobs, gaining meaningful employment. And the reason for this is because the government, again, as I have said, has systematically, using transfer of its populations, diluted those opportunities that could have been left for our people. And so when those opportunities come up, the people from French Cameroon have a leg up over our people. On the other hand, employment opportunities for our people in the French region is a no-no. Most of our graduates end up being taxi drivers, end up being bike-seeking, as you call them, bike drivers, end up having to start small businesses to manage themselves because they can't find the jobs that meet the qualifications, the academic qualifications that they have spent time and money to acquire. The forfeiture of natural resources from our regions hasn't been met by a sharing of those profits from those resources. So there has been no mechanism for equalization. We in Canada, they have something called equalization payments. So if in one province that has a lot of oil, they generate a lot of the revenue for the state. There is a formula that has been designed and agreed upon where royalties are remitted back to that province, and in order to balance the economic prosperity across the country. We never saw any of this in Cameroon, despite the fact that a majority, I would say 70% of the natural resources come from Amazonia, from southern Cameroon. A lot of the extractive industries are in Amazonia, southern Cameroon. They are either under-extracted or they are over-extracted, and we don't benefit anything from it. The stifling of the Anglophone region's commerce by imposing heavy custom duties, illegal taxes for goods crossing through French Cameroon territories by security forces either demanding these taxes or by custom agents illegally demanding custom payments causes our economies to suffer. Another thing of great economic importance that was mentioned in an earlier discussion was the land grabs. We have seen that there has been an illegal land grab by the appointment of senior administrative officers who dish out our lands, carve them out, and hand them over to their families and friends. This stifles the economic potential of our people, and this leads to unemployment, this leads to impoverishment, and all of this is designed to annex us to the point where we become beggars and would accept anything from the Republique du Cameroon. We talk about the constant harassment of small business owners, designed by the imposition upon our democratically elected municipal councils of a central government designate called the government delegate, who through that system overtaxes our small business owners, overtaxes the local traders, overtaxes the people to the point where economic potential is stifled. The effects of all of these economic strategies of annexation has been hardship, systemic inequality, and this led in large part to the Coffin Revolution of 2016 as manifested in the street protest and civil disobedience. Political strategies of annexation. A lot of this has been mentioned already. Recolonization and assimilation. The deployment of colonial francophone governors, senior divisional officers across our territories. The centralization of civic and administrative services in the French regions so that our people, in order to conduct their administrative businesses, have to travel down into the French regions in order to have access to the administrative offices that could process documents, that could provide the requisite administrative services that they are required to do to advance themselves, whether as civil servants, whether as business people, or as entrepreneurs. This is all designed politically to stifle growth in our regions and to stifle administration in our regions. Ministerial positions. This is a token. This is a political token provided to our people to shut them up, to say the least. So we have, if we look at the composition of the Cameroonian political class, and we look at the military, we have barely 1% of Anglophones, Southern Cameroonians in the top brass of the military. We have barely 1% of Anglophones, Southern Cameroonians holding top positions in the government. So all of this is designed to politically annex us by tokenism, assigning junior positions which cannot effectively do anything politically to advance our cause or the pleas of our people. The effects of all of this has been to enslave, to dehumanize, and to embitter and cause our people to be helpless and to create a reliance on a political system of French Cameroon, which is in itself ineffective and corrupt. We also have the disrespect for international instruments and agreements. Earlier on, a comrade talked about the Green Tree Accord, which had required, that stems from the Bakassi ruling from the ICJ, which has required that all the parties return to their original boundaries as of independence. The fact that La Republique du Cameroon remains in our territory, remains as an occupational force in Ambazonia, is in total contravention of that ruling. Naturally, La Republique should have returned to the beginning, to the other end of the Mongo. We have the Banjul Accord, which Professor Anyangwe has referenced in his presentation to us here today, which recognized the distinctness of Southern Cameroonians as a people. We talk about rulings from courts in other jurisdictions. The Abuja High Court ruling. The total effect of this total disregard for international instruments, for international law, as it's applicable to French Cameroon, is that it has led to the rise of the sentiments of what we now call Ambazonia rising to fall no more. It has led to what some have termed a call for separation, and which has been reaffirmed here as we have heard this morning. So I'll just go over the immediate causes. We know that the very immediate causes of the conflict was the fact that the lawyers took to the streets to demand several things, including that we have an English common law bar. We know that the teachers, in support of the lawyers, took to the streets to demand that we take back control of our Anglo-Saxon system of education, which was largely being stifled by the French Cameroon. We know that the traders, in support of the teachers and the lawyers, took to the streets to demand that they have a better opportunity to compete, whether as small business people or as entrepreneurs, in order to enrich and to remove our people from the impoverishment that had been systematically imposed on us. And all of this, the culmination of all of these three events led to the events that caused the civil disobedience that led to the creation of the consortium and the eventual arrest of the consortium leaders and imprisonment of these leaders spiraled into what we now have today, because again, as has been very well talked about here, for over 60 years we have made demands, we have made concessions, and at no point in time has the Republique du Cameroon government been interested in coming to the table, been interested in meeting any of these demands, been interested in addressing the root cause of this. And here we are today. In conclusion, injustice knows no language, it knows no race or ethnicity. So the issues of Cameroon, and as previous speakers have said, cannot be quantified as simply a linguistic or a cultural issue. It is an issue of territoriality, of identity, and of annexation. The fact remains that decades of injustice perpetrated against the peoples of southern Cameroon has reached a tipping point. The actions of the Cameroonian government are not just unjust, but a gross violation of fundamental human rights, international law, and it demands condemnation, investigation, and prosecution. That is the conclusion of my presentation. I will just call on one of my colleagues, Dr. James Tita, and he's just going to give you very quickly. We did, in Canada, we did conduct a survey on this question, and he's going to give you some results, and it's only a snapshot at what our people out there are thinking. So, Dr. James.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to be very brief, please, so just to make sure I don't go over time. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm just going to reaffirm some of the discussions we've been having here. When we heard about the conference, we had a Canada-wide Zoom conference call with Dr. Fontaine-Neva, and we decided that I think it's a good conference to actually chart a way forward to this struggle. And what we did, we actually tried to mobilize Canada, and we did what we call an opinion pool, because the conference of the people to get their own talking, so that when we leave from here, we should be talking with one voice. The ranking on social media will not be coming again. So even though we had the time constraint, we tried as much as possible to cover some people. So what we did, we get into the society, go to Southern Cameroonian associations in Canada and talk to the people. Because of time, we couldn't cover the whole of Canada. So we had a survey of close to 300 people that actually voted. And the question we had two questions. The first question was, in effect, what do we think the better way in solving this crisis? The first option we had was outright independence, or you might term it restoration of the statehood of Southern Cameroon. And the second question we had was, would they prefer a federation that might include confederation or 10 state or 2 state or whatsoever? The second question was based on in a situation where we have to dialogue, who will be responsible to be able to mediate in this dialogue? So do you prefer the UN alone to come in, the AU, the African Union, and the EU, or a combination of these? So I'll really tell you that here, the answers we got, the results we got, I have all the results here. If you want them, I can show them to you. For the first question, just in line with what Prof said, we had 90% for full right independence.
That's right.
For the second question, so we had about 60% of people accepting that we need mediation from a combination of all of these: the UN, the AU, the EU, and international communities. So I think that is all we got. I think from here, from what our frontline leaders have said, we're happy that we have a platform. So what we should be living from here after the conference, speak with the same voice, let's have the same opinion, so that international communities will listen to us. Thank you so much.